on to drawing 17, we've finished with the radiator shroud and grille. We're up to the bonnet and the left and the right hand side. Part number 122, 126 and 127. We'll get Ezio to make a forming buck because we've got curvature of the bonnet that has to be fitted to the forming buck so it fits our radiator shroud and also our firewall. We also need the forming buck for the correct size of the side panels because all three pieces should fit your forming buck to then transfer over to the car. We'll get Ezio to make our forming buck so that we can start making the bonnet.
We're now up to the buck assembly for the front of our pedal cart. As you can see from our drawing, it looks a little complicated, but it really isn't. We're referring to drawing number 18, and we'll take you through it one step at a time. I'm now looking at drawing number 19. This is my template drawing. And as you can see, these larger parts and the two gussets over here are made out of 12mm marine ply. And I've got these sections up here that are made out of 42 by 19 dressed pine. What I'm going to do now is cut out these templates and place them on my sheet material of 12mm marine ply. I can even cut these ones out and put it on top of my timber pieces and trace those if necessary. I've now retrieved all the pieces that were cut from the larger sheets when we cut out our previous project pieces. And having cut out my templates and referring to my cutting guide, I've now placed the templates in place and worked out where things have got to go. And if you recall, we've already marked out our B2, which is over in this part here. So the next step is to tape everything down and mark it all out. I'm now positioning template B1 on the piece of material that was earmarked for it, lining up the bottom edge, so that's one cut less that I have to do. And I'm going to tape it all down, and then I will centre punch all the crosshairs, which will assist with the pre-drilling and the assembly later on. I've now got these pieces all marked out, ready to be cut. I'm just going to use a hole saw, jigsaw and bandsaw to finalise that process. I've now got my pieces all cut out, ready to go. The next step is to drill out the clearance holes using a 4mm drill bit because we're using 8-gauge screws, and then I'll countersink each hole as well. What I've got here is a little bit of scrap, and I'm going to place my board over the top and clamp it here in the middle somewhere. And the reason for that is it'll stop the splintering out on the other side. A little tip here would be to put a little bit of masking tape on my drill so that I don't go too far and drill into my nice bench. These bottom holes, it's very important that you hold your drill nice and square because they're close to the bottom edge. I'm now up to making parts B6 and B7. I need two parts of B7 and they'll be made out of standard pine 42 by 19. With part B6, I can either cut out the template and transfer it to my material or just read the measurements and transfer them on here using a tape measure or a steel rule. Now that I've got my piece B6 marked out, and I'm actually going to label it so I know what it is, I have to consider the best way to cut it. It's very simple just to cut it by hand or with a drop saw, but then the consideration is the long piece. I'd like to leave it all intact, and I'm going to cut it on the bandsaw, and because it's all in one piece, it'll be a lot easier and safer to cut. I'm now going to cut this to length using a tenon saw and my little bench hook that I made. Just cut a few millimetres away from the line so that I can then trim this up on my disc sander. My next piece I'm cutting out are my two B7 pieces. The previous one, B6, was marked out on the face of my dressed pine. Now my B7 pieces need to be marked out on the edge. You'll notice that there's angles that I need to refer to, and they're very specific, 76.2. I'm going to use a digital protractor to do that, but you can cut out the template and simply trace it on top. I now have one B7 piece marked out, and the consideration is how I'm going to cut it, whether I cut it with a handsaw and then dress it up on a disc sander, or my preference is to use a drop saw. And by doing that, it'll give me a nice clean cut, and then I can measure from that cut and mark out my second piece. I now have my pieces ready to assemble. My base piece and my big side piece. And as you can see, it's going to be hard to hold it together as I try and fit the screws in with my screw gun. So I'm going to use the aid of my bench vise. And I'm going to place my material as such. This little fellow will sit on top, and I'll be able to hold it nice and neat, and I will screw it. And I'll repeat the process on the other side using 8 gauge by 25mm screws. Now that I have my pieces in position, I'm going to drill a 2mm pilot hole to alleviate any possibility of splitting. Now that I've put these two pieces together, let's repeat the process and do the other side. So I'll place my material in the vise. Now that I have this together, I'm going to refer to the plan and have a look that my side pieces need to be 240mm high. So I'm going to make some marks here. 240mm, and that'll give me the position of where this piece is going to fit. The other one is my central piece, which I'm actually going to take the measurement from the centre of the pre-drilled hole that I have. Just bring it up, draw a line across. I'm going to do the same on the rear side. Draw a mark, draw a line across, and that way when I come to fit this piece, I'll be able to line it up central to everything. I now have my marks at 240mm up from the base, and I've also transferred some lines on the interface so that I can then lay this over and slide this into position, and I'll be able to see exactly where I need to be and drill my pilot holes and then fit my screws in. In this position here, I'm bringing everything right to the edge of the bench, holding my material flat, and then with the pilot hole. Now be careful not to lift the drill, otherwise you'll go through the side rail. So keep it level with the bench. And then fitting the two screws. Very gently. The part that's important now is that the screws are nice and flush. Now that I've done that, I'm going to do the same on this side and repeating the process over here as well. that's left to do now is to fit in the triangular gusset supports. So the large one at the front and the other two will fit in the back. Now that I've finished the buck, I'll hand it over to Vaughan and he'll do all his metal shaping for the front of the car.
Thanks to Ezio for the forming buck. I've now got the grille in place on the shroud, just temporarily with some masking tape. You can see here the side supports of where we would lock the side panels in have to be flared out ever so slightly to match the angle of our forming buck, because when this slides over, we're going to make the bonnet fit. All three pieces have to line up with the shroud. I've got the radiator shroud fitting the forming buck. This is really crucial because it's a representation of our engine bay, the firewall, and also the chassis mounting points. So we can start to make the bonnet. We've got drawing 23 here. Our bonnet, part number 122. We'll need to cut out template T25. It's a piece of 1mm mild steel, 460 by 290. With this, it's really critical that we get the center line marked. You can cut out the sides, but do not fold the sides until we've actually got the side panels of the bonnet done. You can see here we've got rolled form where it's a very narrow front, wide rear. We've also got a fold line running through here. Then just below that, we've got a suage line. This is the bottom fold represented here, so we won't do that until later. Our bonnet's been laser cut out. We need a center line on both sides. Whether it's hand formed or laser cut doesn't matter, because as we're forming this process, what we do is we flip it over and we constantly will be referring to the center line on the forming buck and the bonnet. We're ready to form the bonnet now. The first method is using hand tools. I've simply got some 125mm diameter pipe, about 3mm wall thickness. We'll also be using smaller diameter pipe, mainly for the tighter radiuses around the ends. You could also use some PVC pipe, but thick wall. You need to make sure that this doesn't collapse, so it's got to be reasonably strong in its form. And the process of making it, we also need to just springboard a little bit, put pressure on it. Do not put too much pressure on it, otherwise you'll crease it. When forming the bonnet, we work from the center line out. This radius through here and the back we'll initiate just simply using our pipe. Then what we'll be doing is like a fanning process. So we're spreading the fold points, rolling from narrow to wider at the back. You can see here our center line is also lined at the middle of the pipe. So initially just putting some load on it to make sure that you initiate the form, slightly moving left and right. Once we've got some form in it, and you can already see that bend, then we go back to the forming buck and just keep working our way along. Okay. You can see here we've already got the middle of the form done. However, where the sheet metal breaks the tangent, that's where we're going to highlight, and we do the same on the front. We'll draw a straight line on both right and left hand sides, therefore that will be our next point where we'll roll it. You can see here we've already covered most of the radius at the front of the forming buck, so just here is where it departs tangent again. So we'll remark both left and right. We'll also then remark the back, and we'll draw those lines. So we'll just continue to radius our piece and get it to form. Sometimes if it's over rolled, just simply lift it up and pull it so that you're just simply correcting the form, that's all. Every time you mark a point of tangent where it departs the forming buck, measure from the previous one, 45, 50 mil, etc. Then transfer that to the other side, the right hand side compared to the left, etc. so that you can keep that symmetry and form true and correct. The process that we're doing here is actually identical as how you would make a hot rod bonnet. But with a hot rod bonnet, we'd be using slip rollers or manual slip rollers to create that form, whereas this is such a short piece, we can do it manually. You can see here we've almost completed it. We've just got this last section on both sides to do. This is where we'll be introducing our smaller diameter. You can see also on the back where we come down, there's a tangent here where it goes from a vertical to a radius. That fold point will go all the way through from front to back on both sides. To form this piece, what I've been doing is I'll start on the front edge, so I'll apply a little bit of force to the nose of the bonnet, then at the back, because it's a much broader, flatter radius at the back, and then I finish it with the middle. So literally just even pressure with your left and your right hand, starting at the front, the back, and then finishing at the middle. That's it, that's our fold point. That's our fold point. I've just reintroduced the radiator shroud to the forming buck. We've lined it up with our centre line. We've also marked the radiator shroud with the centre line on the bonnet as well. You can see here where the fold point is on the radiator shroud. I've marked that at the front. Also the back, the vertical face where it then goes into the radius, that will be your fold point as well. So we can mark that, then we'll do the fold that's the correct angle in relation to the forming buck. Just a word of note, we'll also need to mark this fold point on the inside because we'll be folding it from this direction. I've marked the fold point, but what we don't know is the angle. So using an angle gauge, we can take that, or we can use a profile gauge, hold it up against the radiator shroud. From that point, we can then, using some angle line, position this underneath the angle line, G-clamp, G-clamp, pull up until we get that angle. As you fold this, try and apply even pressure front and rear, even use your hip and pull up on the piece. I've done a very conservative fold angle on the first fold. If you overfold it, what can happen is you'll have a form or a crease through here where it flattens it out slightly. So take your time when you're doing the folds. You can see here the sides are fitting very flush. We've got a little high spot just through here and here. So how we go about fine-tuning that is literally applying some downwards force, so you're pushing against the forming buck and then just opening that flange out a little bit. You may have to refold that angle very slightly, but just a little bit of manipulation, fine tuning, etc. Make sure that fits nice and snug. We've got the bonnet fitting our forming buck and our radiator shroud. So now we need to do a body line or a suage line. On our drawing 23, If you have a look at the dimensions, you come up 10 mil, it's about 10 mil wide, and it's about 3 to 4 mil deep. We're going to be doing that as a process where we're routering a piece of timber. We'll then be clamping this and we'll use a hammer form process. We're going to use this piece of timber to make a hammer form for our suage line. So what we'll be doing is with a core piece, a router bit, 13 mil wide, go 4 mil deep, make sure it's about the middle of this piece of timber. Your timber should be longer and wider than your sheet metal. So what we'll be doing is once it's routed, we'll then be clamping and we'll be doing a hammer form. We've got our piece of timber back from being routed. Now what we need to do is measure and mark the inside face. From this fold line, we come up 10 millimeters at the rear. We do exactly the same at the front. The suage will be about 3 millimeters deep. So what happens when you suage, either hammer form or machine form, you will lose material. However deep it is that material that you will lose. If it's 3 mil deep, you'll lose 3 mil in width. Now we've marked the bottom of the suage, we need a clamping jig to hold everything in place. Some leftover 13 by 13 steel from our chassis build. We've also got these two pieces here, which is the spacing for the tooling that we'll be using. So this clamping jig gets put on top of the timber where the steel gets sandwiched. We then have these flat bars that gets placed over each end, G-clamped, and then we can start working with our caulking tool. I've moved over to the welding table here, a good solid base with some G-clamps so I can get good pressure, so it's not going to move around when we actually start doing the hammer forming. Just lining up our previously marked bottom of the suage with the bottom edge of our router cut piece. This is our other spacer, allowing enough clearance for our tooling to get in there. There. So that's all lining up nicely. There's our flat bar. That's our flat bar. I've just done an initial clamping pressure, so now I can just double check, make sure everything's lining up. Just come along and fine tune your tooling. Once you've got it all lined up, really give it a good hard squeeze. It's all clamped, we're ready to start forming now. This is just a basic cold chisel purchased from a hardware store. This profile will give you quite a sharp body line. This is a half round profile that will give you a profile that's got a very slight roundness to it. Finally, we'll be using a T-dolly. This fits in the channel perfectly and it will give us a really neat half round profile. Take your time during this process, don't try and do it in one pass. It might take several passes backwards and forwards, applying a little bit more pressure. You've also got to make sure when you're looking down into that channel, we're trying to form it so it's smooth. So as fewer lumps and bumps as ripple as possible. I've just finished doing the second suage line. Next we have to do is the fold along the bottom on each side. So we'll be putting it back onto our hammer form again and we'll be repositioning our clamps because it's such a small surface area between here and our fold line, we don't want to squash or damage any of the suage that we've just put in it. To fold the edge, we'll initiate it with our seaming pliers to about 45 degrees. Okay, the trick with this, see the 90 degree on the head, so we've got to squeeze it as hard as you can with your opposite hand. Apply some downward force or pressure to initiate the fold. Come back, increase the angle of fold. Eventually when you get it to about 45 or 50 degrees, we can then reclamp and finish it off with a caulking tool. This is just a piece of flat bar steel, approximately 8mm, 10mm thick. So all we're going to do is work that edge over. We're at about 60 degrees now, we need to get it to 90 degrees. So using this face and working my way along, what it does, it reduces the amount of stretch on that face and you won't have any hammer marks in it. That's the bottom edge folded. You've got to do the other side. Now we'll show you how to do it using machinery.